universe of Warhammer 40k is a grim one, and Space Marine 2 brings this grim dark world to life fairly well. Humanity, though technologically advanced, has stagnated and twisted into something that would see us as nothing more than a cog in the galaxy-spanning machine that is the Imperium of Man. I could say more on the universe and the decades of world building and lore that has gone into it, but there's other channels out there that would be way more informative than this one. That being said, I can say the 40k universe, in my opinion, is pretty dope, and Space Marine shows exactly how dope it can be. I would be lying if I said I never worry when an entirely different studio takes over a franchise that makes a direct sequel to one of the best 40k games I've ever played up till then, but Saber really pulled it off. You play as a Space Marine, a genetically engineered super soldier that is covered in so much armor it would make a small tank blush. Well, more accurately, play as Lt Titus, a former captain of the Ultramarines, the poster boys of the 40k universe. I'm gonna get this out of the way now. I'm not a fan of the blueberries, but since Papa Smurf woke up, they've been doing a major bit of driving for the plot lately. And even though they're bringing back other major characters, these guys are the ones you'd see if you did a small cursory search into 40k to begin with. I digress, however. We met the good captain in the first game where he was tasked with fending off an orc invasion on the Forge world of Graia in order to save war materials there. Turns out the Inquisition, a group that is basically the Imperium's secret police, was making a weapon that was meant to turn the tide of the war, if not all of them. Unfortunately, the weapon was a lie and it created a portal to the warp. That is, for lack of a better word, space hell, where demons and the other forces of chaos joined the fray. After taking out the war boss of the orcs, we take on the leader of the chaos forces, and eventually win. But at a cost. It was during the span of the game that one of our marines under our command began to suspect us of corruption and being aligned with the forces of chaos themselves. Side note, screw Leandros, that little nerdy punk. After everything's said and done, we were taken away by the Inquisition to find out if these accusations are actually true. Turns out they aren't. The game then picks up 200 years afterwards. Titus is now a member of the Death Watch, an elite team of Space Marines tasked with hunting and defending the Imperium from alien threats. In this instance, they're deploying to a jungle world of Kadaku to deploy a virus bomb that would hopefully bring an end to a Tyranid invasion. The Tyranids are a vicious alien race bent on consuming biomass, and if left alone will strip an entire world into nothing but a barren rock. The big problem is, in the 40k universe, most of those rocks happen to have humans on it, and humanity doesn't like that. Unlike the first game where the orcs were more of just an angry mob, the Tyranids act like an all-consuming swarm. There are many times when they're just bearing down on you, when they aren't individual creatures but more of a stream, making for some truly grandiose moments where there's just numerous enemies on screen, all seeming to be moving with one goal. I should probably touch on the combat of the game since it's basically 90% of what you'll be doing, with the other 10% dedicated to opening doors and running to the next fight. One of the major changes from its predecessor is that it got rid of the dedicated stun move meant to set up executions. Now only certain enemies can have a finishing move performed on them after doing enough damage to them, but there are still a few changes that make the combat not only feel snappy and fast, but also gloriously brutal. An indicator will pop up on certain attacks, and depending on the color you have a chance to react, and if you do so perfectly, you can get some pretty nice results. This system, in my opinion, is a little bit better than the first game since it makes all those brutal finishers feel a bit more earned. And with how many enemies there are sometimes, it really helps keep the combat in a solid flow. The weapons you get are something you'd expect from 40k. You got your bolters, your power weapons, and the iconic chainsword. And if you know anything about 40k, either from the games or the books, you know exactly how brutally efficient Space Marines can be when it comes to fighting, and this game captures it perfectly. Story-wise, it's very connected to the first game, but you only need to play it in order to know what's going on. With that being said, spoilers ahead for the rest of the game, and feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp. We see Titus on a special mission with the Death Watch, and well, things go south pretty quickly, seeing as their dropship is overwhelmed by flying Tyranids, eventually making us crash to the ground. As you make your way through the jungle, we see more of our brothers fall and meet their ends. Eventually, we make it to our objective, an orbital delivery cannon. This is where we will load the virus bomb and launch it into the atmosphere, hopefully bringing the swarm to an end. Unfortunately, after fending off the swarm, the cannon fires, but it doesn't seem to be effective. Titus is then attacked by the bulk of the swarm as he's gained their attention. We run into one of the larger bioforms, and just as it gains the upper hand, severely wounding Titus in the process, we get rescued by our other fellow Marines. Sometime later, Titus awakens, and the chaplain lets him know that he's been made a Primaris, basically the more recent upgraded version of a Space Marine. They're harder, better, faster, stronger, and more marketable since Games Workshop loves selling expensive plastic. We are reinstated as a member of the Ultramarines as a lieutenant, now with a veil of suspicion draped over us that will eventually come to a head as the game continues. We get orders to locate a Mechanicus scientist doing research on something the Imperium has deemed vital for recovery. It is during this initial refamiliarization with our chapter, we meet our two new squad mates. Sergeant Gadriel and Brother Chiron. Both are relatively green when compared to Titus, and are also a bit suspicious of their new team leader, especially as the story goes on. We deployed to the jungle world of Kadaku in order to evacuate several tech priests and recover valuable data on something called Project Aurora. Before that, however, we had to secure an orbital facility with the guard in order to activate the orbital defenses and give the bugs a taste of human technology. After making our way through the ramparts and battlements, and eventually realigning the targeting array, the cannons fire, taking the Tyranid ship out of the sky. With the main Tyranid bioship down, we move on to the facility to recover the data. After slogging our way through the jungle, encountering many ambushes here and there, we run into a lictor, one of the most dangerous creatures the Tyranids can produce, eventually leading to a boss fight with the creature itself. And it's a pretty frantic affair considering it moves around so quickly, but eventually we manage to take it down. A little after that, we run into the facility we were looking for. As we make our way inside, we find it infested with rippers, little tiny Tyranids that are basically like piranhas. But this does start one of the more interesting sequences in the game. You're given a flamethrower and you have to use it to keep the swarm at bay as you make your way through the facility. This also just shows some of the attention to detail they put into the game, as the mass moves and surges based on how you move through the rooms with them. Eventually, however, we clear our way through and we transmit the data over to the tech priest. And with that, we make our withdrawal from the planet. Or we would, if not for the fact that one of our dropships got shot down as it was making its way out, and it's now on us to get there and investigate what happened. Luckily, we get jump packs to make this trip a little bit easier. It also helps with smashing the bugs, of course. After clearing a massive Tyranid growth, we're able to make our way to the crash site. As we make our approach, we discover something concerning in the wreckage, starting with one of the more important passengers meeting a grisly end. As Titus checks the rest of the ship, he feels something he hasn't felt for a long time, causing him to collapse. After getting back, he's met with even more questions as he tries to find out what the cargo the ship was carrying and what is Project Aurora. But their duty never ends, and with the main researcher of the project gone, they move on to the next person in charge of the project, on the hive world of Avarax. It is also here where I really started to appreciate the effort developers put into the game, especially when it comes to making varied environments. Despite your only being on 3 worlds, they are massively different from each other. Avarax is a sprawling mega city, with all the massive scale that the 40k universe is known for. Sadly, however, the entire city is swarming with Tyranids, and as such, we have to take the fight to them. When we arrive, we make a few more discoveries about what Aurora actually is, and that it's using the device from the first game. This device was a powerful shard of warp energy, which we thought we destroyed in the first game, at the very end. Shortly after making this horrifying discovery, we're snatched back to the situation at hand as we realize the Tyranids are attempting to destroy a nearby reactor, which would cause massive damage to the city. We have to fend off several waves of them as they throw themselves into the reactor, like moths to a flame. Eventually, we shut it down. With more data on Project Aurora, we head out to track down the new head scientist, but in order to do that, we have to cross under heavy fire. After helping several guardsmen hold the line, we meet with one of our fellow Marines who informs us that a powerful enemy is nearby and has prevented them from crossing the bridge, meaning it's on us to take it out. This boss battle is pretty straightforward, just keep chipping away at their health and then go in for that sweet finishing move. We then get a ride over to the outpost near where our scientist is located. We get there, but something seems off, especially with the guardsmen.
If you are deserters, I'll execute you myself.
Captain Fairburn, come in. Captain Fairburn, come in.
Ambush! Kill them!
Now that Chaos has joined in on the war for Avarax, we get to see that there's something more to this conflict than originally meets the eye. That being said though, fighting Chaos is significantly different than fighting the Tyranids, especially since you're facing off against other Marines. Granted, they're hollow husks of Marines, but still Marines nonetheless, making them decently tough, and they also have the added benefit of being able to teleport around the battlefield. As we encounter more and more Chaos forces, Chiron snaps and goes on a rampage, and we have to provide cover for him as we make our way forward. Eventually the team gets back together. It's here we can see some of the frustration Titus has been feeling in his current situation, and with his current squad. After a few words with Chiron, we make our way to the scientist and clear out the Chaos forces that were attempting to breach the door where he was at. As we extract him, we learn more about Aurora, and why they need the device to power it. Some more of Titus's past is revealed, especially what the official report was on Graya. That is, him dying during the invasion, and not being accused of heresy by one of his subordinates. We get back to our captain, and the situation on the ground is not good. Both the forces of Chaos and the Tyranids are pushing towards the astropathic relay, the only facility capable of sending a communication outside of the system, and it's absolutely vital that we get there to send a message to the chapter master Marnius Calgar and request reinforcements. However, both enemy factions are causing their own unique form of disruption. Both of those situations will eventually be handled in the multiplayer mode. As Titus and co prepare to head out, he's confronted by his squadmates about what happened on Graia, and why and how the captain ended up in the Death Watch, and the circumstances of him serving as a Black Shield. After this conversation, we land inside a guard outpost, and we get to see what the backline of the war looks like. More of that grim, dark setting starts to settle in, from near fanatical speeches
Then take up the Cadian standard and hold it high so that the enemy will know the name of their executioners!
to violent executions, all within a stone's throw of each other. We really get to see what life is like for the Guard. As we make our way through our camp, our squad mates voice their concerns about what they've learned about Titus up to this point. As we punch into the front line to make our way to the relay, we encounter small pockets of chaos, showing their increased presence on the planet. As our route gets changed, we get one of, in at least my opinion, the best sequences in the game. As we use our jetpacks to cover a massive distance. After a few more smaller encounters of Tyranids and a few Chaos forces here and there, we make our way to the outer gates of the relay. It's here we have to fend off a major Tyranid push, and just as it seems like we're about to get overwhelmed, one of our teams who was tasked with a different mission manages to damage the hive mind, wiping out a huge number of Tyranids nearby. As we enter the relay, we find them in dire straits, with both the Tyranids and Chaos both interfering with the relay in their own unique ways. We attempt to send the message regardless, but that's when something goes wrong. The Astropath accused Titus directly of heresy, and this is where tensions with the squad come to a head. As brother fights brother, a shot rings out, but instead of Titus meeting his end, it was the Astropath. It was soon revealed that she was possessed by the Chaos sorcerer Imura, who has been leading the Chaos forces in this attack. After a decent scrap, he gets away, unfortunately. We now have to deal with the fallout of what happened with our squad. That is, before heading to the next world in the system, Demarium. This world is a massive cemetery with graves and mausoleums everywhere. Sadly, the dead won't be able to rest in peace as the forces of chaos have set up shop throughout the place. Before deploying to the world, the chaplain wants a word with us. It does mostly relate to what happened with the squad at the relay.
An accusation of heresy.
Her voice was puppeted by a...
The lieutenant will answer.
But he also once again reiterates his concern of the corruption that Titus is believed to be guilty of. After that, we prepare to head out. We get a speech from the captain as he rallies the second company to prepare for deployment. And oh boy, do we deploy. Now, I'm personally a sucker for callbacks, especially in video games with certain sequences. This next one takes us all the way back to the very first moments of Space Marine, the very first game. We are aboard our dropship preparing for a dangerous and non-codex approved jump. And despite their initial tensions, Titus and his team have bonded in their own way, and it shows as he starts to soften up in his interactions with them. We prepare to make a daring jump, dodging debris and bodies as we make planetfall. From here, it's a straight slugfest against Chaos as we move to take out a beacon that's being used to call in more demons to help to corrupt the planet. When we make our landing, it's a brutal trek to deploy a signal beacon in order to take out the Chaos reinforcements that are coming from it. This is where we have a bit of a unorthodox solution to the problem. We throw an entire ship at the beacon, and well, the spectacle of its collision is something to behold. With the beacon taken out, we make our way to Project Aurora proper. The only issue is it's underground. Way underground. Making our way into the depths of the world, we discover how deep chaos has really infected the planet. With so much corruption around, it starts to affect the squad, causing them to see and hear illusions. After more grinding combat against many tough enemies, I can't recall if I mentioned it before, but fighting the Chaos Marines is an entirely different challenge, considering how tough they are, and you never really face off against just one of them. That being said, like just about every enemy, with enough damage they go down. As we push further in, we discover ruins. Ruins that belong to something far older than the whole of humanity itself, and well, there are some concerns about that, and what these scientists were really messing with. Without going into details, picture Terminator mummies. We get closer to where the device was located, and we start to notice something strange going on with the Chaos forces. We attempt to get the scientist to shut down the experiment, but he refuses and moves to activate Aurora, regardless of the risks. Imura appears and attempts to stop the scientist himself. When we interfere, he sends one of his monstrous creatures after us. This thing is a hellbrute, and they are truly a challenging fight. Imagine a massive mech suit with a demon shoved inside. It's fast, durable, and very, very angry. After enough fighting, eventually it goes down, and just in time for the scientist to activate the device properly. But it didn't go as planned. It turns out he created a machine that could, instead of suppressing the warp, seems to magnify it. Imura capitalizes on this and kills the scientist and steals the device, making the situation look pretty grim for our boys in blue. With the device sustaining the warp breach, we see some of the forces that accompanied us fall to madness, or at least a significant portion of them.
We are his feathers, loose in the empty air. Oh, see us Emperor protects. The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects. The Emperor protects.
As we make our way through the broken soldiers, we eventually get to the forward position where our captain is trying to come up with a new plan. And from what we can tell, the situation is very dire. It's decided that we need to move in to set up a beachhead for an assault on the pylons themselves. It's here where we have one of the coolest scenes in the game. That is, you're moving with your battle brothers, all of them, across a bridge fighting Chaos forces. We make it to the front line proper and are redirected to help a part of our forces that have lost contact. As we skirt the line with a few shots here and there, we make our way to the last position of the team. And this next sequence gave me goosebumps as it happened. We raise our banner and hold the line against a literal sea of enemies. It's either us or them, and we will go out in a glorious last stand if it has to be us. Just as all seems lost, we get help from reinforcing Marines, but more importantly, the chapter master himself has come to handle the situation. We brief him on what's going on and we come up with a potential means of closing the warp rift. That is, finding a way to rotate the pylons. With that plan in mind, we mount an assault on the first pylon. After a stirring speech, we charge in and push the front line against the forces of Chaos. With the first pylon successfully rotated, we now have a plan, and it seems like we can act on it. We send several other teams to deactivate the other pylons. Now it's a brutal slog for our team to make a way to another control point to rotate a pylon. As we proceed, we encounter a dreadnought, a massive mechanized machine piloted by a fallen Marine. This starts at one of the coolest scenes where essentially the dreadnought is escorting us to the pylon control node. We can literally stand back and watch as it mulches through enemies, and in one of the more grandiose moments it straight up destroys a massive monster with nothing but a statue. With the way now clear, we activate the last pylon, weakening the rift enough for our forces to launch a proper assault, and put an end to all this. We make our push only to be met with more demons and their magic spells. We manage to follow Calgar into the breach and set out to end this once and for all. When we enter the warp, or more accurately, this small pocket of it, we get to witness some of the genuine weirdness that this dimension is known for, the whole time being harried by visions and illusions meant to slow us down. Eventually we come upon Imra, and this is where we have our final boss fight with him. This fight is pretty simple if you figured out the combat rhythm, that is, parrying and dodging. The fight does have a few surprises, however, namely the massive demon that comes out to give the sorcerer a hand. As we put the hurt on the sorcerer and take down the demon, we now have to move to save Calgar. This involves making our way through more and more illusions, some a bit more real than others. As we cut our way through, we eventually meet up with the chapter master and move to finish this once and for all. We push the device and interrupt Imra's plan to use it to gain more power. In doing so, we manage to destroy the device as well as the sorcerer before leaving the warp. We awaken surrounded by our brothers as we celebrate our victory over the Chaos threat. With that done, we are given honors befitting our contribution to the salvation of these worlds. We also get reassigned to a new task force, only giving us a brief moment to say goodbye to our squad. And it's also here we get to speak to the chaplain for one last time. He tells us that we're still not absolved of our suspicion, and that the taint of heresy still stains our honor. But our good old battle priest does something strange. He removes his helmet and reveals his identity. And it's none other than our good old friend, Leandros. That punk ass. With that, we board our dropship and head off, thus ending the story of Space Marine 2. Space Marine 2 is a pretty solid game, and it's planned to continue getting more and more content as time goes on, from more multiplayer levels to cosmetics as well as operations. If you can, I would strongly recommend this game for the sheer quality of the 40k story that is inside of it. Can't wait to see what they do with this game if it ever gets a sequel. Hopefully we don't have to wait as long as last time though. More and more content coming out as well, we'll see how they treat the multiplayer and where they go from there. I know one thing, I'll be purging enemies with the Emperor for a long time to come. Thanks for watching. The next game will be set out in space still, but it's definitely not going to be as dark. Heck, I dare say it might even be downright cute. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay safe out there, and have a good one.
We will never get this planet's stench out of our armor.
Compared to your usual aura, it is an improvement, brother.
Deeply amusing.